You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 82 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, your host for the show, and today you're going to hear from Brian Mazzaferi from the band I Fight Dragons. I Fight Dragons is a band who, after only a year, find themselves signing a major label deal. But what's interesting is the events that led them to that deal were very focused DIY tactics that built an enormous amount of buzz and started generating consistently strong sales for their music. We've talked to numerous solo artists in the past episodes that have built a full-time career going completely the DIY route. But in Brian's opinion, and I might find myself agreeing with him, it's still tough as a band that might have 4 to 5 members to generate enough income on their own to sustain a living for that many people without some sort of larger machine behind them. He highlights that for a band, we might still be in a middle area between the old music business models and the models of the future. I think you'll find Brian's insights to be thought-provoking and maybe a bit of a different take on where things are in the industry. Plus, he shares some great DIY tips for connecting with fans. So let's get to that interview. All right, well, joining me on the phone is Brian Mazzaferi from the band I Fight Dragons. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on the phone, and I know that you've made quite an impression on the president of our parent company, Tony Van Veen. He had you on as a guest on a panel that CD Baby and Disc Makers hosted, and he was very impressed with some of the promotional efforts you've been doing with your band, so it's cool to have you on the phone to hear about some of those. Why don't you start by giving us a background on I Fight Dragons and a little bit how you guys got started?
Sure. Well, we are about a year old officially. It's actually interesting. We took about 6 months before we even officially sort of launched, put up music on MySpace and the website and things like that. We did all that on February 6th of 2009, but we basically started putting stuff together in July of 2008, and kind of assembled things. We just, played some friends and family shows and kind of really got a good handle around what we wanted the music to be. Especially, that was the biggest thing. Is we started by recording, a 5-song EP, and then we released that at a small show at a club in Chicago called the Elbow Room, which we built up as big as we could and packed the place. And from there it just kind of, went nuts. We tried to do a whole lot of stuff we could with social media, tons of internet stuff, but also tried to put on, a really great show. And we kind of kept building through Chicago shows up through the summer. Then we ended up playing a date on Warped Tour, the Chicago date. And that was kind of really nice. That was our highest visibility show, I'd say, up till then. And it kind of that ended up connecting us with our booking agent and our manager. And then we actually ended up in the fall playing the MC Chris tour. So he did a national tour, 45 dates over a couple months, and we were on that. We opened for him. So it was really nice, our first kind of intro to a wider audience. And kind of all the while we've just been trying to build things and connect with more fans and kind of go about using any tool available and everything necessary. And it's been kind of a crazy journey from then to now.
It seems like a lot's happened in a year. Well, why don't you describe the music a little bit?
Sure.
And then we'll get into how you managed to pull off so much of this in 1 year.
Well, the music is called, it depends what you want to call it. We've called it sometimes Nest Rock, Because basically what it is it's a hybrid of sort of pop rock influence music, pop songs with an extra layer of what's called chiptune, which is original music made using the old sound cards from old video game systems like the Game Boy and the NES. And yeah, that kind of sums up, what we do. That's kind of the final layer of our sound. And then live, we actually trigger those sounds. A lot of electronic music, when played live, is usually more like a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all instrumentalists, so we wanted to find a way to actually physically play the stuff. And it just sort of seemed like a neat idea to build out sort of Nintendo controllers and the power pad and things like that as instruments. So we actually play all of the electronic sounds live, triggering them on Nintendo controllers and things like that.
So do you think that that little, I don't want to say gimmick, because it's not really a gimmick,
okay.
but that unusual thing you're doing helped build an audience quicker? Maybe
I'd say it definitely helped. It's one of those things where it's tough because, a lot of people who... Well, here's the other thing I'll say about it, though. There's a lot of people doing that sort of thing. It's just, a lot of people, it's something like this happens, or if a band does well, I think a lot of people kind of look and say, oh, well, it's because of this or that. And I do think an interesting thing is that chiptune, we didn't make it up. It's
Mm-hmm.
been around for years, I would say. I think it started basically in the early part of, this last decade, in the early 2000s, maybe even the late 90s. And, people started taking these, the old sound cards and making new music with it. And I've seen actually a lot of bands that I love in that genre, like Anamanaguchi, and I'd say Anamanaguchi is the best known for doing that sort of thing. And it's interesting because there's still something that we do that's different. To sort of sum it up, I'd say it definitely helped us get attention, but that without, solid fundamentals and songs and musicianship and stuff like that, that it just would have fizzled out like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of other things that get attention.
What were you guys doing? You said February. It's been about a year since you released kind of your debut EP. What were you guys doing to build a fan base so quickly? I mean, you've got your music, and even if it's the most amazing album ever, it's a year. It's really tough to build up that kind of fan base. So you had to be doing something right. And as far as connecting with people, what were you guys doing?
Well, I'd say the biggest sort of thing we did, it all revolved around our email list. So we started in February with 0 people on it, and basically collected emails from starting at that big live show. We collected, I'd say, 100, 200 emails from people there, and collecting emails at shows, giving them stickers or buttons, and from there we put up our only thing on our website was sign up for our email list and you get a free digital copy of our EP. And it seems kind of funny because we'd worked 6 months on it, and
Mm-hmm.
it was our big the best thing we could produce, and we gave it away for free if they sign up for the email list. And that I think helped a lot. Almost from the beginning, we were getting I would say 20 to 30 signups a week just from people telling other people, like, hey man, you can unsubscribe right away, literally from the welcome email. You can click there's a one-click unsubscribe, and then you just have the CD. So there's a lot of people signing up, and surprisingly few people unsubscribing. And then the other key was once a week we sent out an email, which more often than not had something free and awesome. And so it was like, we'd record us doing covers of other people, or like covers of our own songs that other people did, or remixes, or videos that we had made. We used a service called Radar Music Videos, which is sort of a crowdsourcing thing for music videos. So we paid a couple $100, and actually an animator in Korea ended up making a cool animated music video for us.
Oh, that's a good idea.
We basically did everything we could to make more stuff that was actually cool, because I think a lot of people think that that's a good idea, and then they'll do something like make a weekly video blog, and then the video blog ends up being really boring. It's sort of like, well, it's not like people just want to watch you do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you can make something, and that was really, I think, part of the energy for us was, what can we make that's artistic and cool that that other people will want, and that kind of really represents us. And the neat thing that we sort of found was, every time we would send something out like that, we would start getting more and more people signing up for the list, because the people who had just signed up last week now got something new, and then they were the ones to share it with their friends, who then signed up, and the next week got something new and just shared it with their friends. So it was kind of this neat sort of like acceleration of what I think naturally happens. People want to share stuff that they think is awesome with, I will say that, I don't know, I've already felt myself sort of like over-talking ourselves. I guess, I hope everybody makes art that they think is awesome. And that's, so when you hear me referring to
I think
it was really great. It's
I think everybody,
I think it is, but I hope everybody does.
I think every artist thinks the art they make is awesome. It's whether or not the other people, anyone else thinks it's awesome.
I mean, that's actually a good point, because I've been sort of, making my way in music for a few years, and a lot of that has involved being a part of projects that at the time I thought were really awesome. But I'd say the biggest thing with I Fight Dragons was I started listening a lot more to current music. And I wouldn't say like, top 40 radio, but like, underground music that's like things you can find on the web that's like really happening now that people are going out to see, and that, really influenced my work a lot. And it was something that I was one of those people that was always, the old stuff is the good stuff, and, no one makes good music anymore. And I was, one of those people who were kind of like proud of that, proud of hating on all modern music.
Yeah.
And it's sort of funny because I found that it's kind of self-defeating in a sense, because if you're trying to build a music career, you're not trying to build it 20 years ago, you're trying to build it now. So theoretically, you're aiming to join something that you don't see a place for yourself in. And that's kind of weird. So I kind of had to get over that. And I'd say that was definitely a part of
That's a really good point, because we get a lot of that dialogue here on the podcast, people that still have those viewpoints, and it's a good point. You're not trying to make music or join a community of 20, 30 years ago. You're trying to join a community and get fans now, and if you can't dialogue with them musically, then you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, there's tons of music fans out there, and they're really cool, and, but the other trick is, it's like anything. I mean, I always think of, starting out, especially as like, you're at a party or something like that, and you're meeting people that, have no clue who you are, because that's when you're new to everybody. And there's so many different ways you could go about introducing yourself to them. But I feel like the majority of artists, and myself included at times, I used to do this a lot. We're kind of like, that guy at the party who's like, here's who I am. I will not, interact with you in the way you want to be interacted with. Here's, whatever. I'm coming in. This is like, I may not know anybody here, but this is my party.
Yeah.
And, we've all been to that party or that gathering and thought that guy was a real dick. and that's all I'm saying. Is it strikes me that a lot of times that's a self-defeating attitude to be so self-righteous. And I've been there too, I just kind of, I think that was definitely a learning point for me, is if you want to actually be a part of the music community, be a member of the community, not, a self-righteous preacher, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Going back to some of the things you were doing with the email, when you said you were doing that weekly, I'm kind of curious as to what your emails actually looked like, because, my band, we just sent out an email. We've been doing it like monthly, and sometimes it seems like, we got to come up with good stuff to put in here, and trying to figure out exactly, what kind of emails are you doing on a weekly basis that aren't getting people to unsubscribe like crazy?
Right. Well, that's actually a really good point, and I'll go ahead and say that we stole the model from Obama. Literally, I had a friend that worked on, in new media for Obama for America, and I kind of, grilled him before we got started on, what were some of their main sticking points and stuff. And I had, we had a lot of thoughts on that regard, but there was also some stuff that is not obvious that really helps. I mean, first of all, it's have a piece of content. Like, don't be, it sounds kind of dry to say, but, don't make you or just the email itself be, a chore, like something that people have to read to know stuff. Give them something. A lot of times in Obama emails, it's was a little different because there's inspiration, but a lot of times there was a video or a story or something you could do to help, and that kind of invigorated people. And, it was something they could interact with, not just something they had to read.
Yeah.
Because then who cares if you read it or not? And so I guess that would be our sort of thing was we tried to, I would say rarely, if ever, did we email 2 weeks in a row without something to be a part of. And it's a weird thing to say, but like occasionally, rarely, it was, so-and-so nominated us for something, would you vote and help us out? I mean, those things can get, I think we've done maybe 2 or 3 of those ever. But, usually it was, look, we, did this cover Weezer song for a compilation album, have it.
Yeah.
Here it is. Pass it along if you like it. Download it for free. And, giving people stuff. Like, look, we made this video. Watch it for free.
Was it always stuff related to the band? Like
Always.
when you're passing around. Okay, so it wasn't like you were passing around a video that's, hey, this is funny. We saw it online.
Not at all. Not for email. I mean, that's for Twitter, for Facebook. That stuff is great. That's just like social lubricant. But I don't know. An email is different because it's a direct communication from one person to one person, and it fills up their inbox. Mm-hmm. If they don't get a chance to say, like Twitter or Facebook, it's like, well, if I don't log into Facebook, it's no big deal. It means I don't have time for Facebook, but I'm going to have to log into my email because I've got to check stuff. I don't know. You can piss people off really easily in the email world. So, that's the other thing I would say is we always kept them very short, very, very light on the graphics. We have a very little header that just is our logo, and then maybe a picture at the bottom. Another neat thing for people to look at. But in between, the paragraphs are all like 1 to 2 sentences, and for the most part, we always try and keep, everything we're going to say on one page. Because if it's long, if there's big paragraphs, if anything like that, people are going to say, I'll read it later.
Yeah.
They'll hit archive or they'll hit whatever, and they won't read it.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. Nobody has time anymore.
Yeah. With
something simple, digestible, and then it actually makes people feel good. I mean, I feel good when I get emails where I can do something and then digest it and then, archive it or whatever. Listen to the thing, tweet about it. Okay, I'm done with that. Fun.
With the content, were you putting like the videos embedded in the email or just links to go see it?
No, I don't know actually if there's a way to embed videos in email effectively. We use Constant Contact. I would definitely say use a professional email provider. I have some pet peeves with that stuff. It's like, don't ever do it yourself. Don't ever, like in terms of non-professional, and don't ever make someone email you to unsubscribe. That's so rude.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I going to say? Like, hey, I don't like you. It's just all social interaction, Would you make a person like, I don't know, it just seems so silly. So it's easy with something like, we use Constant Contact. There's like a 60-day free trial. So it costs a little bit of money, but if in terms of that being, the center of what you do, I think it's really important that people not feel any kind of animosity towards your emails. And I know I personally, and I know I have friends that are on email lists where someone says, oh, by the way, if you don't want to receive these emails, just send me an email back and I'll take it off. And I report spam. Like, I'm sorry. That's like, at that point, you're spamming me because I don't want to, be mean, but you don't give me an option here. So always realize people don't owe you to read your email.
Yeah. And definitely, the benefit about an email company doing it for you is also just security and privacy. I've seen bands or people email. It's like they just put 100 people in the subject line, and so now everybody has all those email addresses.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're getting emails.
Yeah,
Cialis and
from people you've never known, and I'm also curious. A friend of mine and I were talking, and he was saying that when you do an email, you should put the direct link to where they can download the MP3, like if you're giving away a free MP3, as opposed to like sending them to a page to download it.
I'm one click. We always put the direct link, and literally a line, because it's a little tricky. You always have to say, by the way, right click on this and click Save Target As. it's a little tricky because there's no secure way to force someone to download an MP3.
Yeah.
Because then technically you could force them to download something else. So it's a little weird, but it seems to have worked fine for us. People get that you download something by right-clicking on it.
Yeah. Okay, well...
Oh, but also, sorry, just to answer your question, in terms of videos, because somebody else taught me this trick about halfway through doing this, and I wish I had known it since the beginning. It's really easy to take a, screenshot of your video with a big play button on it or whatever, on YouTube, and then just put that in as a clickable image that goes to your YouTube page. So it looks like it's an embedded video, but then it just takes people to YouTube in the same amount of time.
You're right. That is simple, but I probably would have...
People, it's just easier because you see a big play button, you want to click play.
Yeah.
I never thought of that until someone told me. I was like, brilliant.
Well, that's a good tip. And what was that video crowdsourcing?
Radar music videos.
Radar music videos. I'll have to check that out. That sounds like a good idea, especially for...
It's still it's a small site. It's run in Britain, but it's pretty cool. I've never seen anything like that for videos except for that site. And
it just cost you like a couple $100 and they made a pretty cool video for you?
Well, yeah, it's whatever you've got. You set the budget and then people bid. So it's kind of, standard crowdsourcing. For us, I think it was $200 or $300 and we said, and we kind of had an idea of what we wanted, an animated kind of 8-bit. If you check it, it's our video for the song Money. So if you look on YouTube, our videos, it's there. It's pretty great. I really liked how it came out. It's not like Hollywood cinematography, but it's for, a video made for a couple $100. I think it's pretty stellar.
Well, that's cool.
If people really enjoyed it and passed it along, it's gotten, 20,000 views or something like that.
So you've built a pretty substantial following through email, and obviously you're playing shows. What was the next steps? I mean, you ended up on the Warped Tour, then you've got a booking agent, manager, and some other big news to share. But what continued to really drive the fans and keep that going? So within a year, you've sold thousands of copies of the album.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors. I'd say the biggest that it's maybe seems a little too obvious, but bears repeating. Like I was on a panel with Michael Laskow, from the president of Taxi, and he's just a really cool guy. And the panel started out with people asking, or the first question was, what are 3 things an artist can do online to get started? And Michael just said, look, I could answer this question, but I'm going to go ahead and say, if we're talking about getting started, make sure you're ready to get started. I'd say that's at the core of it, but beyond that, then it's all just, the stuff the stuff we've been talking about. The email list has been a huge part of it, and then, when it comes time, which, I think came time way earlier than we thought, it was, all of a sudden, like 6 months after we were a band, that we started talking with, people. And there were people that wanted to manage us from earlier on, but I would say it's important to make sure that anybody you're adding to your team really is going to add something, and it's not something that you could really do and are just going to feel better about having someone else do. Because, it's a manager is a funny thing, and especially in, the modern world, it's like you can't afford to not be doing certain things. And I think some people get mental solace from like, oh, well, my manager's supposed to handle that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So for us, it was, when we ended up meeting our booking agent and manager, it was like finally the right fit. And it was just, everything was obvious and it was great. And they found us. We weren't out there submitting to people and stuff like that. It's just, to tell this sort of bleak truth, there's just not that many people out there, artist-wise, that are in a position where, they're starting to like break through and stuff like that. So if you get yourself to that position, a lot of people start knocking on your door. Mm-hmm. And, and I think it's just important to make sure that before you go with anybody, they are the right people for you and what you want to do. And, here we are 6 months later, and we could not be happier with everybody that we're working with. They've really, in terms of what you want that to do, is the people that can talk to the larger industry and can get you tours. We've actually got I'm worried because I think by the time this podcast comes out, this will all be in the open, but we just booked a really big tour, our booking agent and our manager, and actually we also just signed with a label that is awesome, and we feel the same way. Like there's somebody that's helping to expand what we do, and they all kind of work together to get us this amazing tour this spring. And I don't know. I don't want to say details on names of the tour and the label, but if you Google, hopefully by the time you're listening to this, you could Google it and find out who they are.
Well, we always do a roundtable discussion that follows the podcast the following week. So by then I'll be able to fill everybody in. So
Nice. Awesome.
One thing I was curious is to find out where your major sources of income have been, because you're doing a lot of things where you're giving music away, which is still, and controversial and in certain aspects, I think, or certain ways, I think it's a good idea, and there's some ways that I think bands have done it that I think it's a bad idea.
Totally.
And
I mean, I wouldn't say I advocate it as a project, as a principle, because the trick is we're not giving it away. People give us their email address, and it's an introduction. They agree to let us email them, establish that relationship.
Yeah,
and we're getting that's much more valuable currency to us than if they gave us a couple bucks and never heard from them again.
And I think that's where a lot of bands, they kind of just do it without any sort of purpose in mind. But where have you seen a lot of your income coming from? Has it been mainly live shows, or is it been download sales?
It's scattered for sure. I have been amazed by the amount of people who still download the album, despite even when we switched about halfway through, about 6 months ago, we switched to giving a special EP away for people who join the mailing list. So there's a couple tracks from our EP and a couple tracks that we send out to the mailing list. Actually, it's more music than we used to give away, but now there are some of the EP tracks, 3 of them, I think, out of the 5 that you can only get from iTunes. We're not giving them away on the internet for free. Yeah. So that's been a kind of nice balance, but that definitely took. We didn't want to shift there for a while. For a while, we definitely still said, please sign up. We would love for you to hear from us, and that's that. But then, that shift happened. So we definitely have seen in the past 6 months a lot more iTunes sales and stuff like that. And that's also like as people start to tell people, there's lots of people out there who don't like mailing lists. Yeah. Who don't want to sign up for stuff, and I can't blame them. And so then, if they're not that kind of type, their chances are they're more likely to go to iTunes and buy it and have no strings attached. Yeah. Maybe that's their stuff. We also have sold a lot at live shows. I think about 4,000 or so copies of our EP we sold at live shows. And actually, we sold those all for Pay What You Want. We basically told people we usually sell them for $5, but if you like what you hear, we want you to leave with a CD. And that, it's true. It's just like if they like our music, we want them to have a CD, period, even if they've only got a couple bucks. So that, honestly, was kind of a big risk. We did this at first on the tour, and it ended up that we did a few dates just sort of saying $5 for the EP and a few dates for Pay What You Want, and it averaged out that we sold twice as many CDs at an average of, I think, $4.80 a piece. And so it was definitely a great thing. T-shirts as well, but T-shirts are just really tricky because they're so expensive, especially when you can't buy a lot of them, at once because you're starting out, so you don't have all that capital. So those are rough. I think people tend to put too much money in T-shirts right away. That can definitely burn you.
I have been in a previous band where merch we went overboard, and even though we were selling a bunch, it was like a big hole to dig out of.
Yeah, exactly. You start selling a lot, and you think, oh, well, we need a bunch of all 3 of these T-shirt designs, and we got to have a lot just in case we sell it all. I don't know. The merch is good, but I would say to go easy on especially T-shirts, because everyone wants a T-shirt, and T-shirts are great, but they are really, to press up a CD is, $1 or $2, depending on, if you want to get crazy with it. Mm-hmm. But, even if you're selling it for $5, that's still a better profit margin or percentage than selling your $8 T-shirt for $15.
I know that, we just have you on the phone, but you are a whole band, I Fight Dragons. Has this process been different being in a band than maybe what, I've had people comment about a lot of the interviews I've done have been with solo artists, and a lot of artists that seem to be getting press for themselves, doing something cool on the internet that's helping them break through are indeed solo artists. But in your case, you're a whole band, and, that does change not only the dynamic, but the amount of money and to spread around and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's a huge change when you talk about if people are, thinking that they want to be, totally independent their whole career. It's really, I would say, at least now, and for maybe the next couple of years, probably still going to be impossible to start from zero and stay independent with a band. I mean, with people, I'm thinking 4-person, even 3. At most, I would say a duo could start independent and stay there. But it's just because of the sort of limits of the communities at this time, for one, and also just the sort of limits of personal, time and energy. Because when you're talking about being independent, a lot of, your success rides on how willing you are to open yourself up to new relationships with fans and communicate with them and establish real personal relationships. So, you know them. It's. I always feel funny in these things because it's like I don't want to get too dry or like inhuman about it, because our fans are, the reason that we're able to do this, and they're awesome people. And establishing and maintaining those relationships takes a lot of time and energy. It's hundreds of relationships, and there's this kind of 1,000 true fans theory and model that I've seen tossed around a lot, and it's interesting because it's a concept designed for one person. The idea is if you have 1,000 people that really, really love what you do, maybe they buy $100 worth of stuff per year from you, and that's $100,000. Wait, $10,000. So wait, that's not even very good. I don't know. I'm missing. My math is off.
It would be $100,000.
It would be 100,000. 100 times 1,000. For some reason, I had 100 times 100 in my head.
Yeah.
So yeah, $100,000, and that the thought is like, well, that's a great living. What's wrong with that? But all of a sudden, if you have a 6-person band, you're talking about more like, oh, well, then you just need 6,000 fans, and it gets pretty tricky because in addition to like the sheer amount of time and energy it takes to maintain that many personal relationships, it's like anything else. Like if to put it in a different way, like if you have one best friend, they're your best friend. But if you have 10 people and you say each of them are your best friend, chances are they're each going to feel a little less loved because you have 10 people that you call your best friend. It's a weird thing that if you start to spread around relationships like that, it's not going to be the same relationship. And so if you have 100 people that are your, biggest fans that you talk with every day, that you do everything with, it's going to be a lot different than if there were 1,000 people like that. It's just kind of, the nature of that stuff. And I don't know, I've kind of gotten off topic.
I think if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that, as a solo artist, you're getting all that money. And as you add members to your band, that money pool gets smaller and smaller, and it's harder and harder to, as an independent artist, manage the mass of people it takes to generate that same income stream for a group of people. And it's still, in your opinion, hard to do that without bigger resources like a label may offer.
Yes. I mean, I think that's hitting it on the head. And in addition to the fact that I don't know how possible it is when you start talking about the number of people you need to stay completely independent, and the number of people you'd need to contact, or the number of people who would need to be, your fans and supporting you, becomes an incredibly large number, and that number becomes nearly impossible to reach by staying independent. That's kind of the whole idea of the record label, is it's a consolidated place that can fund, radio and distribution and things so that more people can hear about you, so that you can, do that for a living, because more people will buy your CD or whatever it is. And so it's definitely a tricky thing. Of course, the nice thing about having a full band is there's more people to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say though that in the beginning I did a lot more because everybody worked, generally, most of the time, and everybody had a lot of other projects going on. But as things started to pick up speed and momentum, everybody kind of, joined the team, and and pitched in more and more, and it's exciting. And I would say, because it's funny, I think in every band, you talk to people, and I've been in bands where it's like, oh man, these two people do all the work, and these other two guys are just lazy. Like they don't want to do postering, and they don't want to do anything. And I mean, it's like, in my head, my reaction to that has always been, well then, I'm going to do all the work, and I'm going to get, my other person that's going to do work with me, we're going to do all the work. And then when it gets to the point where this is a really, like, exciting thing, those guys will either get excited or quit. Mm-hmm. And it's just the truth, because if it's a really exciting thing, it's an exciting band that people are excited about, then, they're either going to want to devote the time or other people are going to want to. Mm-hmm. And, it's tricky. We've had, 2 band members turn over throughout the year. And I wouldn't say it was really for that reason. I think a lot of it is just that as you start to escalate, I mean, even though that sounded like a kind of, mean way to put it, but the truth is, as you start to take up more time and energy for a band, things get more exciting, but also more demanding. Yeah. And so, the people that weren't necessarily in it for the career and don't necessarily want to make the sacrifices it takes, in terms of time and energy, are, going to find their way to what they want to be doing. Yeah. And that's fine too. But then at that point, there's also other people that would love to join in and help and add their strength to the cause in the band.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm curious, as you have signed, you just signed with a label, and it's a major label. In our follow-up episode, I'll spill all the details, but it's a major label, but I'm curious because it's obvious that you're not naive to how things are now. Right. And you guys have definitely done a lot to really work some things on your own as far as like connecting with fans. And I'd be really curious to hear about some of the details of the contract, if you're even able to share at this point, just in how it might have been different from, I was in a band that was signed to an EMI label in the late 90s, and our contract was a basic standard record contract that most likely doesn't exist anymore. But having kind of the indie sensibilities that you guys had, what kind of concessions or what kind of dialogue went on about what the label was going to do, what they're going to get, what rights you're surrendering? Was any of it different than the standard contract in the past?
The answer is undoubtedly yes. I've never signed one before, so it's hard for me to say, specifically. But I have read a lot, Donald Passman and all the things that you're supposed to know how they're supposed to look. And yeah, I mean, the answer is in 2009 and really in 2010 especially, like, nothing is standard because it's an industry that's in total flux. And the thing that really appealed to us about, the label that we ended up going with is the people there really, really seem to understand that. And we're really excited about the things we had been able to accomplish, and really excited about our material, the songs, because that's the other thing that is just true. When you start to talk about a larger playing field, you can't really bring a lot of the, especially when you talk about radio, which is the big sort of, a lot of people like to say radio's dead, but it's not. We actually have had on KTCL in Denver, they've been awesome and have been playing us a lot, and actually we've done pretty well there. I think this week we're still number 10 on the main alternative station in Denver. Uh-huh. And but seeing how that market has compared to all the other ones, even Chicago, where we've done a whole lot indie and not really had any radio play other than local shows and stuff like that, it's been a fascinating kind of side-by-side comparison. And it's like people listen to the radio. A lot of people do. And it's funny because I think a lot of the people who like to talk about this stuff aren't necessarily people who listen to the radio as much, but plenty of people still do. And that's, the other kind of key is the fact remains that for a band of any number of people and with any kind of like semi-mainstream aspirations, or, if you want to be on the radio or do the sort of things that, it's tough and it's a hard thing to say, but like the things that a lot of people dream of when you dream about having a career in music. I know that I'm in that category. like, you want to hear your song on the radio. You want to be able to tour and have that be your living, you know. You want to be able to play big shows and rock with people, and I don't know. You want to do that stuff, and that's, you know, I still think that here in 2010, that's not really possible other than with the, you know, working with somebody who has, you know, the ability to invest in you and, you know, the resources to do so. So on the surface, you know, it makes sense that because they're basically the only people that are still there that can do that, you know, that it really be a partnership to help develop. And that's, I will say that I'm incredibly happy with, you know, with the way that things turned out and with who we're going with and the way that that's turned out, you know, their willingness to go to bat for us and to really help build all aspects of what we do. So I think it's a double-edged sword. There's two sides of the coin. It could be used by labels that just want to milk more money out because they're dying, or it can be used by the ones that, you know, want to actually build a partnership.
Mm-hmm. I guess one of my last questions regarding that, and then we'll close out the podcast, is, you know, you guys have done a lot of stuff where you've given away content, and you even sell USB drives for $100 for a lifetime, you know, basically a subscription.
That would be a good addendum to the money part. It's fun to have limited edition promotions where only a certain number of people get them. Yeah. And we raised $10,000 with that,
Wow. So, but those people are supposed to get lifetime, you know, they bring the USB drive to your show, and they're supposed to be able to get all your latest music, if I'm read it correctly. Is that right? Yeah,
sort of. So, the drive itself is more of a symbol, but we release to them via email for life. Everything we make digitally.
So
and then how does free tickets to our shows?
How does that all play in now that you're in a situation that's out of your control? I mean, was that stuff stated in the label deal that you're still able to do that? Because going forward, now they own, you know, if it's a traditional deal, they'll own the masters, and you won't technically have the right to do that.
I mean, they recognize, I mean, it's a question because it's hard to say, it's hard to speak for every record label out there, but, you know, they came to the table with us excited about things we had done, you know, and the way that we've, you know, been able to connect with people and stuff like that. And it hasn't been sort of an antagonistic relationship at all, which I think is also the traditional, you know, relationship between label and band is you're the bad guy, we're the good guy. You know, you're going to try and shut down stuff, and we're going to try and, you know, do whatever. And I think that people are starting to realize from, you know, on the business side of things too, that that's not that's not a model for survival. That, you know, it's really hard to think in black and white anymore. Yeah. You know, there's going to be, it's, even if it's like, well, yeah, theoretically you're not supposed to do that, but, you know, what it's, I don't know, it's on the record here too, so it's hard for me to just go and say things in black or white, because some of it's still to be worked out. It's everything. All I will say is, like, in 2010, time to get gray. Yeah. And I think everybody on all sides of the coin realizes that it's about, you know, the connection and the fan base and building that. And it's not so much about saying you do this or that. It's not about dividing up the pie, you know, as much, because the pie is shrinking and everybody's got to eat. Yeah. Well, we'll be definitely watching to see what happens, and maybe in a year or two we'll have you back on the podcast to do the behind the music. Awesome. There was one last thing I wanted to ask you about. Was I'd seen that you mentioned that you had run Facebook ads. How did that work for you guys? Awesome. Although I will say Facebook ads are really tricky because they're really powerful used in a very specific way. Their power is in their specificity, because you can compete with a major label in a very small area with very little money. So, like, you know, and they're really only effective with a very specific goal. Like, we didn't use them until people kind of knew who we were in Chicago, and then they became really effective to let people know about shows. You know, we would have a Facebook ad tied to our upcoming, you know, our homecoming show at the Metro. We ran Facebook ads for a couple weeks before that. And we actually do have like running, we spend a couple bucks a day on just sort of general Facebook ads for, I think the pool is like hundreds of thousands of people who might like our music, who are, you can list similar bands, you can list stuff like that. And the neat thing is they've become more effective as Facebook has become more central to everybody's lives.
Uh-huh.
Especially with the fan pages now showing up in the news feeds. It's really nice. We've got, I think, like 6,500 fans on our Facebook page, and that is awesome. Like the way that they're, not that our number is awesome, but just the way that, you can connect with people, and the usage of the fan page is a really awesome thing. And so, yeah, it's at this point we do spend a couple bucks a day just to kind of have ads out there circulating for people who might, want to become fans on our Facebook page.
I'm sure that's something other artists are going to be trying, and I know my band's been testing the waters in that, and it seems like
I don't have any hard and fast rules for that yet. It's still tricky.
Yeah, it seems like those things you gotta kind of test and tweak, and if you do it right, totally. it can pay off. Well, Brian, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. I'm going to close out the show with a track by I Fight Dragons, but before I do that, if you have thoughts or comments to share about this episode, we'd love to hear them. You can call our listener line at 206-426-5683, and we might just play your comments on the next roundtable edition of the podcast that will follow this episode. You can also leave a comment on the podcast website at cdbabypodcast.com. Just go there and find the show notes for this episode, and you can comment and leave all your thoughts there. Or you can email us at info@cdbabypodcast.com, and we love getting emails as well. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time, and here's I Fight Dragons.
Sun goes down, sun comes up. Days can drown in a plastic cup in this town. In this town. Don't know how, don't know when. Something came but it left again, and I'm down on this town. 'Cause no matter what I see, people love to disagree. Every time I say what I wanna be, someone says that's not how it's gonna be. Come on, baby, quit your dreaming. Grab the things, the train is leaving. Time to pick that somewhere you wanna go. Get there quick or drown in the undertow. Come on, baby, time is wasting. Choose a wheel and get to racing. Sun goes up and down again. Hard to stop feeling broken in and worn down by this town. All the same, you find me here, placing blame and escaping fear and self-doubt in this town. But no matter where I go, people love to tell me no. Every time I say what I wanna be, someone says that's not how it's gonna be. Come on, baby, quit your dreaming. Grab the things, the train is leaving. Time to pick that somewhere you wanna go. Get there quick or drown in the undertow. Come on, baby, time is wasting. Choose a wheel and get to racing. Every time I say what I wanna be, someone says that's not how it's gonna be. Come baby, quit your dreaming. Grab your things, the train is leaving. And if you feel like nobody understands you, just smile and pray that they clap their hands. Come on, baby, drown your sorrow. Work today and live tomorrow. Time to get that somewhere you wanna go. Get there quick or drown in the undertow. Come on, baby, time is wasting. Choose a wheel and get to racing.
You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.